Here are the worst fates of the Primarchs in Warhammer 40,000. They were created as warlords capable of conquering star systems, surviving wounds that would have gotten a tank written off, and leading entire legions into battle. The Emperor gave each of them a superhuman body, the mind of a master strategist, and a minor family problem roughly the size of the galaxy. Some received worlds, armies, and glory. Others received chains, prophecies, parasites in the brain, 10,000 years of isolation, or a brother carrying a demon blade. Primarchs rarely get a quiet retirement. Usually you either vanish into the warp or become the cause of an entirely separate religious schism. This list includes both loyalists and traitors. The ranking moves from those who lost years and the lives they once knew to those who lost their bodies, their will, their souls, and even the right to finally die. Not every Chaos Primarch made the list. Lorgar, Fulgrim, and Perturabo spent far too long walking toward their current thrones to be presented as accidental victims of circumstance. Alfarius and Omegon need a separate video, 3 conspiracy boards, a spool of red string, and one person who will still lie at the end. The 2 lost legions will remain outside the ranking. The Imperium has invested considerable effort in making sure nobody touches that subject. We begin with a fate that almost looks merciful, until you count how long the person trapped inside it had to wait. Lion L. Johnson. You return to Caliban after the Horus Heresy, expecting to find your home world, a restored legion, and a fortress where everyone still remembers which man is the Primarch. Instead of a welcome, your fleet comes under fire. Luther, the man who found you as a child, raised you, and helped unite the knightly orders of Caliban, has led a rebellion. Part of the Dark Angels followed him. While you were fighting at the far end of the galaxy, your home became a fortified camp for men who believe you betrayed your own history. Not a great homecoming. Most families at least wait until you have taken off the armor. The battle tears Caliban apart. Orbital bombardment and the power of the warp split the planet open. The fortress of the Order survives among the wreckage and later becomes the Rock, the mobile fortress monastery of the Dark Angels. Luther wounds you in single combat, then sees what he has done and finally breaks. You disappear. To most of the Legion, their Primarch is dead or lost. A small circle of keepers knows a different truth. You are hidden deep inside the Rock, concealed even from your own sons. 10,000 years pass around you. Wars, crusades, the fall of Cadia, and the opening of the Great Rift. The Dark Angels turn the shame of Caliban into the central secret of their existence. They hunt the fallen, interrogate prisoners, erase witnesses, and sometimes value the secret more than the lives of their allies. All of this unfolds around a sleeping father who could explain what actually happened, but the family meeting keeps getting postponed to the next millennium. When the Lion awakens, he does not return to the Imperium of the Great Crusade. He is older. His body is still that of a Primarch, but his face carries the weight of the missing ages. He finds himself in Imperium Nihilus, beyond the Great Rift, among worlds that have nearly lost all contact with Terra. His legion was divided into chapters long ago. His name has become a myth. Even his old severity has changed. The Lion meets members of the Fallen and learns that not all of them consciously betrayed him. Some were dragged into the rebellion, some were deceived, some spent millennia simply trying to survive after Caliban was destroyed. He begins gathering those he believes can return. They become known as the Risen. For the Dark Angels, this is almost a revolution. For 10,000 years, they built their culture around the belief that every fallen must be captured, interrogated, and destroyed. Then their father comes back and explains that the family secret had complications. The Lion's fate is worse than an ordinary death because he awakens in a world mutilated by his absence. Caliban is gone. The Emperor he knew is gone as well. Most of his brothers are dead, missing, or transformed into demons. His sons turned guilt into a religion. The lion receives a second chance, but it arrives 10,000 years after every consequence of the first has already hardened into tradition. He can fight again, protect humanity, and even correct old mistakes. He cannot recover the time. For a Primarch, this is still the mildest fate on the list. Only a destroyed homeworld, betrayal by his adoptive father, and an awakening 10,000 years too late. From here, the Emperor's family history becomes considerably less healthy. Roboute Guilliman. Your punishment begins with the fact that you survive. After the Heresy, you do what you do better than anyone else. You organize the ruins. The Emperor is bound to the Golden Throne. Horus is dead. The legions are exhausted. Billions have died, and the surviving Primarchs argue about the future as though they still have plenty of time. You create the Codex Astartes and demand that the legions be divided into chapters. Rogal Dorn sees it as an attack on the legacy of the Imperial Fists. Other brothers resist as well. You force the reform through anyway, because you have seen what a single Primarch can do when given too many ships, too many soldiers, and too much confidence in his own righteousness. You had a particularly convincing example. His name was Horus. Then Fulgrim comes for you. At the Battle of Thessalia, you face a brother who has already become a demon Primarch of Slaanesh. Fulgrim wounds you with a poisoned blade. Conventional medicine cannot stop the toxin. You are placed in stasis on Macragge, held on the edge of death, and displayed inside the Temple of Correction as a sacred relic of Ultramar. Pilgrims stare at your face and convince themselves that the wound is slowly healing. It is not. The Imperium simply has a remarkable talent for turning the absence of a solution into a religious ritual. For you, only a moment passes. For humanity, almost 10,000 years go by. When the stasis field is shut down, Belisarius Cawl, Yvraine, and warriors your age would have called Xenos, heretics, or both, are standing nearby. The armor of fate keeps you alive. You awaken inside a state that bears the Emperor's name while violating almost everything the early Imperium was built to achieve. Candles burn before statues of your father. Priests call him a god. Worlds are ruled by hereditary tyrants. Knowledge is either lost or declared sacred. Millions die so that an official in the next sector can receive a document a century after it stopped mattering. And now you are responsible for repairing a system that treats its own dysfunction as evidence of holiness. You meet the Emperor on Terra. Nobody can accurately describe what happens in that moment. To those outside, the audience is brief. To you, it feels very different. The father you remembered as a ruler and a man has become something vast, fractured, and terrifying. He addresses you as a son, a tool, a traitor, a savior, and the last usable component in a failing machine. Perhaps all of those definitions exist at once. You leave the throne room with orders to save the Imperium and the understanding that there will be no warm family reunion. The Emperor now has too many voices and far too little human patience. You launch the Indomitus Crusade. Cawl gives you the Primera Space Marines, new fleets, and the title of Imperial Regent. Arrows begin moving across strategic maps. Supply sectors reconnect. Worlds are retaken from chaos. From the outside, it looks like hope has returned. From the inside, you are managing the corpse of an empire that must keep moving because Tyranids, Orcs, Necrons, and traitor legions are already closing in behind it. Every victory buys time. Every reform meets resistance from people who regard inefficiency as an ancient tradition. You cannot abolish the ecclesiarchy because its faith holds billions together and may genuinely fuel miracles. You cannot tell everyone the truth about the past because the truth could destroy more worlds than the next Black Crusade. You despise the worship of the Emperor and are forced to use the saintly daughter of a preacher, living saints, and your own image as the resurrected son of a god. Bureaucracy won. It made Roboute Guilliman work as his own patron saint. Fulgrim took 10,000 years from you. Awakening took away the option of dying quietly. You see what the Imperium has become and understand that you cannot abandon it. Your talent for order becomes a sentence. Another Primarch might vanish into the warp, find a personal war, or announce that humanity's fate will be decided in honorable combat. You open supply reports. Billions of lives depend on whether a grain fleet can cross an unstable corridor through the Great Rift. In the 41st millennium, even a demigod learns that the end of the world begins with logistics. Guilliman is alive, free, and commanding again. That is why his fate appears near the beginning of the list. But every morning, a man of the Great Crusade wakes inside a state that turned the failure of that crusade into the foundation of its culture. And no one else knows how to keep it afloat. There is one more detail that makes his return miserable. Guilliman measures success by what remains after victory. A stable world, functioning law, a supplied army, children who will not have to retake the same wall. In the modern Imperium, victory often means nothing more than postponing the next catastrophe. A liberated planet may lose astropathic contact. A rescued sector may end up on the far side of the rift a month later. The chapter you reinforced may already be dead by the time the Order clears the bureaucracy. Guilliman can win a campaign and still receive a report saying the population of the victorious world starved afterward. His talent did not disappear. The environment in which results could endure did. So the Regent keeps making plans, knowing that many will survive only until their first encounter with the warp, human greed, or an official too afraid to stamp a document without permission from a dead superior. Jaghatai Khan. Your life is built around movement. On Chagoris, you unite the tribes, crush the Palatine Empire, and create a realm that does not try to tame the open steppe. Then the Emperor arrives and gives you the 5th Legion. You accept command but keep your distance. Other Primarchs build fortresses, palaces, and administrative systems. You build fast fleets and make sure nobody mistakes freedom for the absence of discipline. The White Scars become the legion the Imperium understands least. Horus believes he can bring you to his side. The Loyalists are not sure you will stay with them either. At the beginning of the Heresy, nearly every brother has already assigned you a role. You ruin all of their plans by checking the facts first. You travel to Prospero, see the aftermath of the destruction of Magnus's world, and refuse to accept the convenient version of events. Mortarion tries to bring you over to Horus. You see what the rebellion is becoming, and choose the Emperor, without feeling much love for the Imperium itself. For a man who considers freedom the highest value, it is an ugly choice between two masters. One is building a brutal empire. The other is already selling his brothers to entities in the warp. The Khan chooses the side that at least leaves humanity the right to correct its mistakes someday. For years, the White Scars tear apart the traitor's supply lines. You reach Terra and join its defense. During the siege, you ride beyond the walls to retake Lionsgate Spaceport. Then you fight Mortarion. The demon Primarch of Nurgle outlasts you, poisons the space around him, and eventually drives his scythe through your body. You let the blade go deeper so you can close the distance, strike back, and banish him. The victory nearly kills you. Malcador tries to pull you back to life, and at the critical moment, the Emperor himself intervenes. You survive, but the heresy ends without any real peace. Horus is dead, the Emperor is bound to the throne, and the galaxy is full of the remains of legions that never received an order to stop fighting. After the Great Scouring, you return to the hunt. Jokari raids strike the worlds of the White Scars. You pursue them and disappear into the webway. That is where the confirmed history becomes very short. The White Scars believe their Primarch is alive and will one day return. The Imperium does not know where you are. Perhaps you died in the passages between worlds. Perhaps you are still fighting in a place where distance and time have no respect for maps. Perhaps there is an exit, but it will open centuries from now at a location that no longer exists. Canon leaves the door open and very carefully refuses to say what is waiting behind it. The horror of the Khan's fate is the absence of an answer. The lion slept inside the rock. Guilliman lay in stasis. Their sons at least knew where the body was. The white scars received a legend. Every expedition might uncover a trace of their Primarch. Every portal might return their father or release the things he chased into the dark. The Khan hated cages, thrones, and stillness. In the end, he disappears inside a system of roads that can lead anywhere and may never let you leave. For a man of the open steppe, that is an especially precise cruelty. You preserved your freedom from both the Imperium and chaos, then ended up on a road with no known destination. Vulkan. Death does not work correctly for you. At first, that seems like an advantage. You are the Primarch of the Salamanders, the greatest smith among your brothers, a protector of ordinary people, and one of the few sons of the Emperor who remembers that a planet's population is made of living human beings rather than campaign statistics. Then Istvan V happens. The Loyalist legions walk into an ambush. Ferrus dies. The Raven Guard and the Salamanders are nearly destroyed. You survive nuclear fire, artillery, and blows that should have reduced a Primarch to a memory. Instead of death, you wake up in the hands of Konrad Curze. Curze discovers that you are a perpetual. Your body returns after fatal wounds. For a normal person, that would be a miracle. For the Night Haunter, it is a new form of entertainment. He kills you again and again. He cuts, burns, breaks, suffocates, releases you into a maze, and watches you return. He is not trying to extract information. Curze wants to prove that Vulkan's compassion is a beautiful mask that will disappear under enough pain. He builds tests where saving the innocent requires sacrifice and waits for the moment you finally choose yourself. You resist. Sometimes you lose your mind. Sometimes you find your way back. Immortality does not protect consciousness. It only guarantees that the torture can be repeated. Eventually, you escape. You die several more times while crossing a war-torn galaxy, the Warp, and ruined worlds. Your sons try to bring you home to Nocturne. Even after you return, body and mind do not immediately fit back together into the Vulkan they knew. Later, you reach Terra through the webway and perform a duty most of its defenders never learn about. The Emperor entrusts you with the Talisman of Seven Hammers, a device capable of destroying Terra if demons break through to the Golden Throne. You become the final lock on humanity's last door. The Salamanders call you the Defender of Life, while your father assigns you the task of burning the cradle of humanity if everything is finally lost. Once again, the family demonstrates trust in the healthiest possible way. After the Heresy, you disappear, then return during the War of the Beast. Centuries have passed. The Imperium is almost destroyed again, this time by orcs who have built attack moons and a state uncomfortably close to an actual civilization. You are found on Caldera. You show no urgency about returning to Terra and no desire to rule the Imperium again. In the end, you lead the assault on Ulanor and face the beast. The duel ends inside an orc temple and its energy system. Vulkan throws himself and his enemy into a catastrophic surge. Afterward, he is nowhere to be found. For any other Primarch, that ending would mean death. For Vulkan, it means a question. Perpetuals return, but the rules of their return are not a convenient guarantee. Vulkan has already recovered from the impossible. He also vanished in an event capable of erasing entire armies. The Salamanders believe he will return when they recover the relics he left behind, the artifacts of Vulkan. They spend centuries searching for them across the galaxy. Every recovered item confirms the faith and extends the waiting. The worst part of Vulkan's fate is not that he may be dead, it is that death was never an escape for him. He remembers every time Curze killed him. He remembers Istvan. He remembers the destruction of his home, the madness, his dead sons, and the duty of guarding a device that could destroy Terra. If he is alive, then somewhere there is a Primarch who returned from death too many times and eventually chose not to return to people. If he is truly dead, the Salamanders may search forever. Immortality turned out to be a gift with extremely precise wording. The body comes back. Nobody promised that anything else would. The salamanders turn their father's absence into another duty. They preserve his relics, search for the lost artifacts, and believe that completing his design will bring Vulkan home. For the chapter, that is hope. For the Primarch himself, that hope could become another command he never issued. If he returns, everyone will expect the same Smith, the same protector of humanity, the same father willing to carry other people's pain. Nobody will ask how many deaths can fit between two resurrections. A perpetual can restore bone, blood, and skin. Memory returns with them. Every awakening brings back the full list of reasons it might have been better not to open your eyes. Vulkan loved humanity more than most of his brothers, and that is exactly why his disappearance looks like a possible choice. Sometimes the kindest Primarch does not stay away because he forgot his sons. He remembers far too well what happened around them. Rogal Dorn. You build walls because you believe some things are supposed to endure. Inwit endures. The Phalanx endures. The Imperial Palace endures through almost the entire siege of Terra. You turn it from a symbol of the coming age into a fortress, tear down works of art, seal halls behind armor plate, and calculate how many men will die at each defensive line. Sanguinius inspires the defenders. The Khan leads counterattacks beyond the walls. You remain at the center of the system, making decisions where every number represents a regiment that will never return. When the Emperor boards the vengeful spirit, you go with him. The warp scatters the strike forces inside the ship. For you, it begins a private torment designed by Khorne. You find yourself in a desert and hear an offer to surrender to rage. Time stretches. You recite military data, names, definitions, and facts, clinging to order. Khorne offers something simple. Stop counting. Admit the anger. Become the man you looked like in the moments after Istvan and inside the iron cage. You refuse, but you leave the trial as someone different from the man who entered it. You find the Emperor after his duel with Horus. Your father is almost destroyed. Sanguinius is dead. Horus is annihilated. You carry the Emperor's body to the Golden Throne and watch victory become 10,000 years of sustained agony. Then the debate over the Codex Astartes begins. Guilliman demands that the legions be broken into chapters. You resist because the Imperial fists stood where other legions never even reached Terra. In the end, you yield so that a new civil war does not begin immediately after the last one. Your legion is divided. The fiercest warriors leave with Sigismund and become the Black Templars. Others form the Crimson Fists. You retain the Imperial fists and inherit the duty of proving they can fit within the new order. Perturabo gives you an opportunity. The Iron Cage, a fortified world built by the Iron Warriors as a challenge. You lead your sons inside. It is a trap you recognize too late, or one you accept knowingly. The Imperial fists bleed through trenches and bunkers, assaulting the positions of the Legion that always wanted to prove its supremacy in siege warfare. Guilliman pulls out the survivors. To your sons, it is purification. To an outside observer, it is a Primarch who survived the siege of Terra and decided to treat guilt with another siege. Centuries later, you respond to the threat of a Chaos fleet. Your forces are too few. You attack before all reinforcements arrive and personally board the warship Sword of Sacrilege. After the battle, only your hand is recovered. Imperial sources disagree about the details. Some speak of remains, some describe a body, others mention only the fist. The modern account leaves the result uncertain. Rogal Dorn is considered missing and presumed dead. His hand is preserved as a relic. Curze once saw Dorn's death. 100 killers drag a giant down in a dark passage. Their blades are covered in blood. Perhaps it was a prophecy of the final battle. Perhaps Dorn survived, lost his hand, and ended up somewhere the Imperial fists never reached. Both versions qualify as a fate worse than death. If he died, the greatest builder of the Imperium ended in the corridors of an enemy ship, buried beneath a mass of ordinary killers. If he survived, then he spent millennia separated from his sons and the state he defended at the cost of everything. All that remains of the Primarch is a fist. Even by imperial standards, the symbolism is unusually direct. His disappearance leaves the imperial fists with a legacy that is both useful and agonizing. They can believe their father died and turn his final battle into an example of endurance. They can believe he still lives and wait for his return after every new catastrophe. Both versions demand the same thing from his sons: endure longer. Dorn built a legion around a duty that does not end when it becomes painful. After his disappearance, that principle survives without the man who could declare the duty complete. The phalanx continues through the void. The chapters of his blood continue defending walls, assaulting fortresses, and measuring their worth by the suffering they can withstand. Even if Dorn returns, he will have to see how his personal inability to retreat became a family virtue. If he never returns, his sons can always add another war to the waiting. The Imperium knows how to turn a missing father into an endless shift. Corvus Corax. You begin as a liberator. On Lycius, slaves mine resources for Kievar, while overseers explain that the system exists for the sake of order. You grow up among prisoners, learn to disappear into shadow, and lead a revolt. Victory comes through sabotage, hidden strikes, and weapons that teach Kievar the cost of preserving the old regime. When the Emperor arrives, you receive the 19th Legion. Some of its warriors were raised before you were found and are accustomed to methods that remind you of the masters of Lycius. You send them away. They will later become the Ashen Claws. Even before the Heresy, your family learns that liberation sometimes begins by exiling inconvenient relatives. At Istvan V, the Raven Guard walks into a trap. You witness Ferrus's death, the betrayal of the Second Wave, and the destruction of most of your own legion. Curze intervenes in your fight with Lorgar and prevents you from finishing it. You escape with only a few thousand survivors. A legion built for precision strikes is nearly erased by a single strike against itself. The Emperor gives you access to genetic knowledge that can rapidly create new Space Marines. For Corax, it is a chance to return his sons to the war and erase the defeat. The first results are called the Raptors. They mature faster than normal recruits, retain their minds, and surpass standard legionaries. Then the Alpha Legion intervenes. The genetic material is corrupted. Later batches become mutants. Some bodies fail immediately. Others retain consciousness inside forms that look less and less human or Astartes. They still call you father. They still want to serve. You use them in battle because the war will not wait while you work through your guilt. After the Heresy, a point comes when they can no longer be used. You isolate yourself inside the Ravenspire. Then you personally kill the mutated sons you created, releasing them from the existence you promised to repair. For a Primarch who once led a rebellion for slaves, it is a sentence passed against his own ideals. You wanted to free those the system had turned into tools. Now the tools before you were made from your own blood, and the only freedom you can give them comes through death. Corax leaves his legion and enters the Eye of Terror. His final word is, nevermore. Inside the warp, he continues hunting the traitors. Later, the word-bearers encounter a creature of shadow and a flock of black birds. It assumes Corax's shape, fights Lorgar, and says it has only revealed what it always was. Lorgar retreats. Corax remains a hunter among demon worlds. Calling him a demon Primarch would be wrong. He never swore himself to a chaos god and did not undergo conventional demonic ascension. But his old human shape no longer describes everything he has become inside the Eye. The worst question is not what he looks like. It is how much of that transformation was deliberate, and how much remained after millennia in a place where thought can reshape the body. Corax entered for revenge. If he is still hunting Lorgar and the other traitors, then his war continues without end, and without his legion beside him. His sons remember the Liberator. Somewhere in the warp, their father exists as shadow, beaks, talons, and hatred for the enemies he failed to kill at Istvan. He sentenced himself to exile because he could not forgive the failure of the Raptor project. Chaos did not even need to put him in chains. Corax chose the Eye of Terror as his prison and turned his own guilt into the guard. The good news is that Lorgar probably is not sleeping very well either. Ferrus Manus. Your fate is shorter than that of most of your brothers, which makes the impact even harder. On Medusa, you grow up among clans that treat weakness as an invitation to die. Living metal covers your hands after your battle with the creature Acernoth. You become a smith, a warrior, and the Primarch of the Iron Hands. You despise weakness, but you understand the idea with more nuance than your sons later will. Metal is a tool to you. After the war, you intend to teach your legion to rely less on mechanical replacement. You never get the time. Fulgrim is the closest of your brothers. You compete, argue, and forge weapons for one another. You create Fireblade. He creates Forgebreaker. Two Primarchs who rarely acknowledge an equal find one in each other. That is why Horus sends Fulgrim to convince you to join the rebellion. The conversation ends in violence. Fulgrim barely escapes alive. You understand the scale of the betrayal and gather your forces for the strike on Istvan. At Istvan 5, rage moves faster than judgment. Most of your legion has not yet arrived, but you enter the first wave with the Salamanders and Raven Guard. The traitors fall back toward their fortifications. A second wave of loyalists lands behind you. Then the Night Lords, Iron Warriors, Word-Bearers, and Alpha Legion open fire into your backs. The trap closes. 3 legions cease to exist as effective forces within a few hours. You find Fulgrim again. The duel begins as war and ends as a murder inside the family. You have a chance to win. Then the Lair Blade, already bound to a demon, gives Fulgrim the strength for one final strike. He takes your head. Ferrus Manus becomes the first Primarch killed in the Heresy. Horus receives the severed head as a trophy. Fulgrim receives a moment of clarity, in which he realizes he has murdered the brother closest to him. The demon in the blade uses that moment and takes control. Death does not end the humiliation. Fabius Bile creates clones of Ferrus for Fulgrim. Again and again, Fulgrim tries to persuade a copy to join him. Every Ferrus refuses. Everyone reaches the same ending. It is not the true Primarch's full return, but the story is cruel enough without that distinction. Fulgrim repeats the conversation with his brother, hoping that one day the answer will change, then destroys another body when it does not. Even a copy of Ferrus preserves the part of him chaos could never buy. The Iron Hands break after their father's death. They decide Ferrus died because of emotion, flesh, and weakness. They begin replacing their bodies with metal even faster. They build a culture where grief is treated as a defect, compassion as a danger, and living tissue as a problem requiring constant correction. Ferrus's final intention had been the opposite. He wanted to teach his sons to control their obsession with cybernetics. His death turns the obsession into doctrine. The Legion takes the most painful moment of its Primarch's life and makes it proof that he had been wrong. Ferrus dies quickly. He does not spend millennia in the warp and does not become the slave of a god. But nearly everything that might have survived him is taken away. His head becomes a gift. His image is copied for Fulgrim's diseased ritual. His sons interpret his legacy backward. His closest brother becomes his killer and then carries that death as part of his own story. Ferrus always taught that weakness must be destroyed. In the end, his legion decides to destroy everything human within itself because it cannot admit the most obvious truth. They miss their father. Sanguinius, you know how you will die. The visions come long before the vengeful spirit. In them, Horus stands over you, the war ends, and your sons lose their minds in the echo of your death. A prophecy can be accepted, avoided, or used as an excuse. You choose the path where knowledge does not release you from duty. Every step toward Terra becomes a voluntary movement toward the place of execution. Baal gives you wings and fear. The desert tribes see an angel. The Imperium might have seen a mutant. You hide the flaw in your blood, the red thirst, because you fear the fate of the lost legions. Before you find them, the 9th Legion is known as the Revenant Legion, the Eaters of the Dead. Its warriors survive where others perish, and sometimes preserve the memories of fallen comrades by consuming their flesh. You change them. You give them art, discipline, and the name Blood Angels. The hunger remains beneath the beautiful armor. You do not cure it. You teach your sons to choose what kind of men they will be when the hunger demands something else. Horus knows about that fear. On Cygnus, demons try to break the Legion through its hidden flaw. Kabanda wounds you and kills many of your sons. The Blood Angels almost fall into uncontrolled rage. You regain control and later defeat the demon. The victory proves that the curse can be resisted. It also shows chaos exactly where to press next. During the Heresy, you become part of Imperium Secundus beside Guilliman and the Lion. Warp storms cut Ultramar off from Terra. Your brothers fear the Emperor may be dead and create a secondary center of power. They crown you Emperor of this temporary realm because Guilliman understands what a crown would look like on his own head, while the Lion understands even less. When it becomes clear that Terra still holds, you abandon the throne and fly toward the siege. You could have stayed. You could have argued that preserving the new Imperium mattered more than a suicidal breakthrough. The vision of your death had already shown you the cost. You go anyway. On Terra, you become a symbol of the defense. Dorn counts walls and reserves. You walk among the people. The defenders see a winged Primarch and believe for a few more hours that victory may still be possible. At the Eternity Gate, you fight Kabanda and Angron. Angron is already a demon Primarch of Khorne, a creature made from rage, pain, and the decisions of other people. You tear each other apart above the final defensive line. In the end, Sanguinius wins and banishes his brother. Then the signal comes from the vengeful spirit. You know what waits aboard that ship. You know the ending. You teleport anyway with the Emperor and the strike forces. The warp separates you. You move through a ship that is already becoming part of the domains of chaos. Visions meet you. Offers meet you. The possibility of another fate is placed in front of you. Horus wants you to turn. Perhaps, in his version of the future, you will stand beside him. Perhaps he only wants to prove that even the best of his brothers can break. You refuse. The duel with Horus is not equal. By then, he is a conduit for the power of all 4 Chaos Gods. You are already wounded from the siege and from the battle with Angron. You fight anyway. Older versions of the story often treat Sanguinius's death as a brief scene before the main duel. The end of the siege reveals it as a catastrophe in its own right. Horus breaks you, kills you, and displays the body within his court. The great angel, whom billions regarded as proof that hope still existed, becomes decoration for his brother's throne. At the instant of death, a psychic shock tears through the Blood Angels. Your sons lose themselves. They see Horus in front of them, even when they are facing allies, walls, or their own brothers. The black rage remains inside their gene seed for the next 10,000 years. A warrior may serve for centuries, resist the red thirst, and preserve his honor, then wake one day inside the final moment of his father. He is assigned to the Death Company, his armor painted black, and sent into a battle from which nobody expects him to return. Sanguinius dies once. His legion continues dying that same death over and over. He knew it would happen, and did not retreat because his absence might have handed Horus victory even sooner. There is nobility in that choice. There is very little comfort. You spent your entire life hiding your son's curse, and proving that blood does not determine choice. Your death creates a curse that removes choice entirely. Horus kills his brother aboard the vengeful spirit. 10,000 years later, blood angels who never saw Horus's face are still falling from the impact. Konrad Curze. You can see the future, but you see it as a sentence. Nostromo has no sunlight. Law belongs to gangs and syndicates, and fear works faster than a court. You grow up alone, without family or teacher. Your visions show crimes before they happen. You begin the hunt. Bodies hang above the streets. The guilty are found without trial because you have already seen what they will do. Crime falls. Nostromo becomes quiet. People behave correctly as long as they believe the night haunter may come for them. That is not order. It is the pause between blows. The Emperor finds you and gives you the 8th Legion. You receive sons recruited first from Terra and later from Nostromo. The first understand discipline. The newer recruits come from prisons, gangs, and families that have learned to use your fear as a tool. The Legion changes. Terror stops being a method for ending a war quickly and becomes a craft its practitioners enjoy. You see the decline, despise your own sons, and keep sending them to perform the lessons you taught them. Curze hates the monster in the mirror, so he breaks the mirror and acts surprised by the shards. The visions show the heresy, the deaths of your brothers, and your own murder by an agent of the Emperor. You decide the future is inevitable. Sometimes the prophecies offer more than one path, but you cling to the worst one. If fate is fixed, responsibility becomes unnecessary. You can skin a city and say it was already written. Sanguinius also sees his death. He walks toward it trying to save others. Curze walks toward his to prove that saving anyone was always meaningless. When Nostromo returns to crime, you destroy your homeworld from orbit. Billions die because fear stopped working when you were not physically present. To Curze, that proves humanity cannot be repaired. To any normal ruler, it proves that a system built around one immortal executioner does not function well when he leaves town. After Nostromo's destruction, the road to Horus becomes almost direct. During the Heresy, you hunt your brothers, fight the lion, infiltrate the Invincible Reason, stalk its crew, and turn an enormous warship into your personal maze. Then you reach Imperium Secundus. Guilliman, the lion, and Sanguinius put you on trial. You use the courtroom as a stage. You accuse your brothers of hypocrisy because they also destroyed worlds and killed millions on the Emperor's orders. The difference is that they acknowledge choice and responsibility. You want to prove choice never existed. You are placed in stasis and cast into space. Later, you return to your legion and settle on Sagwalsa. You build a palace filled with corpses and wait. The Emperor sends a Calidus assassin named Mishen. You know the exact hour of your death. Your guards are ordered to let her through. Mishen enters and kills the Primarch with a phase sword. Curze's final words reduce everything to his central argument. Your death proves nothing except that the Emperor wanted you dead. You could have resisted. A Primarch could destroy the assassin before she completed the movement. You choose death because it confirms the prophecy. Afterward, the Night Lords hunt Mishen despite your order to let her leave. They kill her and tear away the relics. The Legion fragments into war bands, each remembering the version of its father that is most convenient. Some call you a prophet, others call you a coward. Others continue the torture because it is the only tradition they understood without error. Curze's fate is worse than death because he built it himself and spent his entire life proving that no other outcome was possible. The visions gave him knowledge. He turned the knowledge into a cage. The Emperor did not save him. His brothers could not persuade him. His sons repeated the worst habits and discarded the justifications. In the end, Curze receives exactly what he wanted. An Imperial agent kills him at the appointed hour. The problem is that being right brings no relief. You lie headless inside a palace of corpses while the galaxy continues as though your proof never required anything from anyone. Magnus the Red. Your tragedy begins with the correct warning delivered in the worst possible way. You grow up on Prospero among scholars and psychers. You believe knowledge can defeat fear. You halt the flesh change after a secret bargain with a power in the warp and convince yourself that you understand it better than the people who forbid such knowledge. Perhaps you really do understand more than most. The warp has a special fondness for people who believe the distance between knowledge and control has already been closed. At the Council of Nicaea, your brothers and the Emperor debate the use of psychic power. Leman Russ and Mortarion demand restrictions. You defend the librarians and their research. The Emperor forbids the legions from using psychic powers and orders the librarius departments disbanded. You return to Prospero and continue the work. To you, the decree is the product of fear and political pressure. To the Emperor, it is an attempt to close a door with something already breathing on the other side. You learn of Horus's betrayal and try to warn Terra. A normal astropathic message may not get through. A ship will take too long. You choose a psychic strike through the warp. To break through the defenses of the Imperial Palace, you accept help from an entity you do not fully understand. The warning reaches your father. Along with it, the protective barriers around the secret Imperial Webway project collapse. Demons gain a route toward Terra. The Emperor is forced to bind himself, the Custodes, and the Sisters of Silence to the war inside the Imperial Webway. You meant to warn him about Horus. Instead, you removed the Emperor's ability to personally stop the heresy at its beginning and destroyed one of his greatest projects. The plan intended to free humanity from dependence on the warp. The Emperor sends Russ to bring you back to Terra. Horus changes the meaning of the order and pushes the wolves toward the destruction of Prospero. You see the fleet approaching and initially refuse to defend yourself. You believe you deserve punishment. You cut communications, hide the future from your sons, and allow the enemy to land. Then the city burns, the 1,000 sons die, and you change your mind. Too late. Russ breaks your back across his knee. In that moment, you surrender yourself to the power that has been waiting all along. Prospero and the remains of the Legion are transported to the planet of the sorcerers. Tzeentch receives a Primarch who still believes he is making an independent decision. Your soul shatters. Different shards carry pieces of your personality, memory, and virtues. One is bound to nobility, another to rage, another to doubt. You try to reassemble yourself, but some pieces are lost or pass into other people. What returns can no longer be called the original Magnus without qualification. You become a demon Primarch of Tzeentch and take part in the siege of Terra. Part of you still believes negotiation with the Emperor remains possible. Magnus remembers that his father offered a path back, but demanded that he abandon a legion already too damaged to save. Later, Vulkan claims no such offer ever existed. Even the scene itself is shattered between contradictory versions. Magnus chooses his sons, or the part of himself incapable of admitting that salvation is no longer under his control. After the heresy, Ahriman tries to stop the mutations of the 1,000 sons. The rubric turns most of the legionaries into dust sealed inside their armor. Their bodies vanish. The remnants of their minds become automatons bound to the suits. Magnus exiles Ahriman for the catastrophe, although the entire history of the Legion has already become one attempt to repair a disaster with the next disaster. You saved your sons from the flesh change. Then you brought them to Tzeentch. Ahriman saved them from mutation. Then he destroyed their bodies. The god of change receives a legion in which most warriors can no longer change at all. Tzeentch has a sense of humor. It rarely helps the people inside the joke. In the 41st millennium, Magnus remains one of the most powerful psychers in the galaxy. He can move planets, tear fleets apart, and fight Guilliman. Every victory occurs inside a slavery he calls an alliance. Tzeentch does not demand simple obedience. He lets Magnus build plans, pursue knowledge, and believe that the next design will finally be his own. Every possible outcome already serves the god of intrigue. Success confirms Tzeentch's path. Failure creates a new reason to use his power. The worst part of Magnus's fate is the repetition. He sees danger and chooses the shortcut. The shortcut opens a larger danger. He tries to correct the mistake with an even more complicated act and gives away another piece of himself. At the beginning, Magnus wants to prove that knowledge creates freedom. At the end, he knows more than almost any living being and remains the property of an entity that controls the meaning of knowledge itself. His soul is broken, his legion is dust, his homeworld is destroyed, and every new plan adds another chain. Tzeentch's chains simply look like opportunities. The especially cruel part is that Magnus can still explain every defeat. There is always a reason, someone to blame, and a next move. Russ was deceived. The Emperor did not trust him. Ahriman acted without permission. A soul shard was in the wrong place. Tzeentch intervened earlier than expected. Every individual statement may be true. Together they create a system in which Magnus never has to accept the central fact. His choices belong to him. The God of Change rarely needs direct worship when it is enough to offer a man one more chance to prove himself right. Magnus receives libraries, demon armies, a world of sorcerers, and unlimited time for further calculations. Every attempt to rebuild himself becomes another version of his personality, convinced it is the authentic one. When the soul is broken into pieces, even remorse becomes an argument between shards. Tzeentch only has to watch while the greatest scholar of the Imperium endlessly edits his own catastrophe. Mortarion. You hate sorcerers because one raised you. Barbarous is covered in poisonous fog. Inhuman overlords live on the peaks, able to breathe where an ordinary human dies. Necaer finds you as a child, calls you his son, and turns you into a weapon. You grow, escape to the people of the lowlands, and begin a war against the creatures who keep them enslaved. Every new suit of armor lets you climb higher. Every conquered fortress brings you closer to your adoptive father. You build your identity around endurance, hatred of tyrants, and the belief that weakness can be burned away through pain. Then the Emperor arrives. He offers help. You refuse and go to kill Necaer alone. The poison at the summit is too strong. You fall before reaching your goal. The Emperor finishes the battle for you. Rescue becomes a humiliation Mortarion never forgives. Your father gives you a legion, freedom from Barbarous, and a place among your brothers. You remember only the moment he proved that you were weaker than he was. That is where loyalty to Horus begins. Not with love for chaos, but with resentment given the shape of a political position. You receive the 14th Legion and turn it into the Death Guard. Its warriors march through toxins, radiation, and conditions where other legions demand protection. Endurance becomes culture. Complaining is treated as defeat. Psychers are viewed with suspicion. Sorcery reminds you of the overlords of Barbarous and of the Emperor's power, which you cannot defeat with conventional weapons. That is why you oppose Magnus at Necaea. Later, you join a rebellion where demons, rituals, and the warp become ordinary parts of logistics. Principles survive their first encounter with convenience, about as well as human lungs survive Barbarous. The greatest threat is standing beside you. Callus Typhon, later Typhus, serves as your first captain while hiding his connection to the powers of the warp. He kills the fleet's navigators and leads the Death Guard into a trap. The ships become stranded in the warp. A disease begins that cannot be endured. The legionaries' bodies rot, but do not die. The pain continues without loss of consciousness. The ships themselves become covered in infection. Time loses meaning. Warriors raised to endure anything receive suffering without an ending and without any possibility of defeating it through endurance. Mortarion holds on. His sons cannot. You hear them begging and understand that every additional minute is an extension of the torture. Nurgle offers an end to the pain. The price is simple. Give him the Legion and yourself. You agree. The disease remains, but it becomes familiar. Rot becomes strength. The Death Guard emerges from the warp as an army of plague marines. Mortarion receives wings, a scythe, demonic immortality, and a master who calls slavery a family. Here, the fate completes the circle. You hated Nakar, the sorcerer on the poisoned mountain. After your ascension, you create the plague planet and reshape it in the image of Barbarous. You sit inside the black manse above a world of fog, disease, and slaves. You become the exact kind of creature you once swore to destroy. The difference is scale. Nakar owned one mountain. You have a demon world and endless armies of the infected. You continue talking about your hatred of sorcery while commanding demons. You continue calling yourself a liberator while spreading Nurgle's diseases. You despise Typhus, but the god favors him and often grants him greater freedom. Typhus betrayed you, condemned the legion to the plague, and delivered it to Nurgle. As a reward, he travels the galaxy at the head of the plague fleet. Mortarion remains the favored son inside the garden of a father he hates. The family pattern is recognizable. Only the plants have changed. During the Plague Wars, you invade Ultramar and face Guilliman. On Ajax, you nearly kill your brother. Then the Emperor's power acts through Guilliman, burns part of Nurgle's garden, and addresses you. Nurgle drags Mortarion back. The punishment happens off-stage, but the meaning is clear. A daemon Primarch may destroy worlds, yet his master can recall him like a disobedient servant. Mortarion's will ends where the will of his god begins. Magnus at least pursued knowledge and believed he was cooperating with Tzeentch. Mortarion openly despises the chain and wears it anyway. He wanted to free humanity from toxic overlords and became a toxic overlord. He wanted to prove he could endure any pain, then surrendered to end the pain of his sons. The choice is understandable. Nurgle was counting on that. The trap worked because Mortarion loved his legion more than he wanted to admit. His only merciful decision became the act of his final enslavement. Horus Lupercal. You receive everything the others wanted. The official account names you the first Primarch to be found. The Emperor raises you at his side longer than any of your brothers. He trusts you with command, names you War Master, and hands you the Great Crusade. Your brothers acknowledge your charisma, your talent, and your right to lead them. At Ulanor, entire armies cheer the name of Horus. At that moment, your fate looks like the opposite of tragedy. That is exactly why the fall becomes so enormous. When the Emperor withdraws to Terra, you are left to manage a war and a political system you were never trained to control. Human officials gain authority over worlds conquered by the legions. You begin wondering what will happen to the Primarchs after victory. You fear that once the crusade ends, the Primarchs will become unnecessary as well. The resentment exists before chaos arrives. Erebus only has to find the wound and make sure it never closes. On the moon of Davin, you are struck by the Kynabrak anathemy, stolen from the Interrex and carried by the Nurgle-corrupted Eugen Temba. Your warriors take the dying War Master into the Temple of the Serpent Lodge. Inside the ritual, you see a future where the Emperor is worshipped as a god, and your own name is cursed. The vision is true, but constructed as a trap. It shows the result of your rebellion as proof that the rebellion is necessary. Magnus tries to warn you. Erebus wears the face of a dead friend and guides the conversation. You choose the version where your father will betray you, because it validates the fear already living inside you. Then the calculation begins. You purge the loyalists from the legions at Istvan III. Virus bombs kill the planet's population and many of your own sons. The survivors force the traitors to descend and fight them. Then you arrange the drop site massacre at Istvan V. Ferrus dies. 3 loyalist legions are shattered. Half of your brothers join you, but each brings his own private war. Angron wants to kill. Fulgrim wants sensation. Perturabo considers himself the only adult in the room and gradually realizes the room is filling with demons. Lorgar worships the powers that supposedly exist to secure your victory. You command an alliance in which nearly everyone is waiting for a chance to solve a personal problem at the expense of the common front. On Molech, you enter a gate into the warp and return with enough power to challenge the Emperor. All 4 chaos gods pour their strength into you. Your body grows. Your mind expands. Your past becomes a collection of things obstructing the goal. You believe you are using the gods. They allow you to believe it. The closer you come to Terra, the less Horus remains inside the War Master, and the more the entities looking through him take over. Entities incapable of sharing even with one another. Leman Russ wounds you with the Spear of Russ. For a moment, the weapon restores clarity. You see what you have become. There is a chance to stop. Malaghurst sacrifices himself to return you to the war, and the last surviving fragment of doubt disappears. By the siege of Terra, Horus sits aboard the vengeful spirit as the center of a growing warp storm. Time breaks apart around the throne world. Reality becomes the stage for one final duel. Sanguinius reaches you first. You offer him a place at your side. He refuses. You kill your brother and leave his body in the court of Lupercal. Then the Emperor arrives. The battle is fought with more than weapons. Again and again, Horus breaks his father's body, demonstrates his superiority, and demands acknowledgement. The Emperor refuses to become the Dark King, casts away the power he had gathered, and leaves himself weaker than his opponent. Olanius Person and other defenders purchase seconds with their lives. At the critical moment, the Emperor confronts Horus with the image of Loken and forces him to prove that he is not a slave to the gods. Horus releases their power, confident that he can take it back after victory. That is when the Emperor strikes with the Athame. Horus understands the trap. The gods were never partners. They never intended to leave the War Master as master of the galaxy. He asks his father to finish it before the power returns. The Emperor destroys Horus's soul and burns his body down to a charred skeleton. Horus does not escape into the warp, does not become a demon prince, and receives no kingdom. The body remains, but the part of the War Master that could ever return from the warp no longer exists. For some, that is mercy. Angron and Mortarion continue in slavery. Horus feels nothing, but his fate ranks near the very end because annihilation is preceded by understanding. In his final moments, he sees that the war, the murder of Sanguinius, the ruin of the Imperium, and the mortal wounding of his father never made him free. He was a vessel. The 4 gods gave him power only until the moment that power stopped being useful to them. The Emperor forgives his son and erases him because no other salvation remains. After Horus, there remains a name the Imperium forbids, a legion on the edge of extinction, and a body carried into the Eye of Terror. The Emperor's children steal the remains, and Fabius Bile creates a clone of the War Master. Abaddon destroys the clone, takes the talent of Horus, and gathers most of the surviving sons of Horus along with warriors from other traitor legions. The Black Legion is born. It becomes a new force built around the refusal to repeat Horus's defeat. He wanted history to recognize him as humanity's rightful heir. History turns his name into a synonym for treason, while his own successors use his fall as a warning. The deepest humiliation in Horus's fate is the scale of the mismatch. Worlds burned for him. Legions slaughtered their brothers. The Emperor was placed on the throne. Horus wanted to become the center of a new age. After his death, his influence survives in the consequences, but Horus himself is removed wherever possible. Loyalists speak his name as a curse. Traitors use his defeat as a lesson. Abaddon builds the Black Legion around the promise that he will not repeat the War Master's mistakes. Even the gods who poured power into Horus abandon him at the decisive moment when the vessel begins to break. He had been the favorite son, first among equals, and master of the largest rebellion in human history. In the final second, only one man remained before his father, with nothing left to offer. The galaxy remembers the war of Horus. Very little of Horus remains within it. Angron. The worst fate of any Primarch begins before he even learns the word Emperor. You fall onto Nuceria among the bodies of Eldari who tried to kill you while you were still a child. Slavers find the wounded Primarch, capture him, and turn him into a weapon for the arena. You possess the ability to feel the pain of others and draw it into yourself. Among the slaves, that gift could have made you a healer, the man who held a community together. The masters of the arena need a killer. When you refuse to kill your mentor, Oenomaus, the butcher's nails are implanted into your brain. The ancient devices replace parts of the nervous system and reward everything except aggression with pain. Calm becomes torture. Thought hurts. Affection, memory, and empathy pass through a mechanism that demands violence. In your first frenzy, you kill Oenomaus. The nails remain and continue digging deeper. The Emperor later examines them and realizes they cannot be removed without killing the Primarch. He leaves them in place. Humanity's great project still needs another general. The general's quality of life is not one of the campaign's key performance indicators. You lead a slave revolt. The gladiators become the eaters of cities and retreat into the mountains. The final battle comes at Deshay. The enemy is too numerous. Your people prepare to die free. At that moment, the Emperor teleports you onto his ship. You beg him to send you back. He refuses. The slave army dies without you. From the Emperor's perspective, a Primarch has been preserved. To Angron, it is a second enslavement and the betrayal of the only family he ever recognized. You are given the 12th Legion. You hate them because they are alive, while your comrades on Nuceria are dead. Your sons try to earn your acknowledgement. You impose deadlines for the conquest of worlds and punish failure through decimation. Then the legionaries accept copies of the Butcher's nails in an attempt to become closer to their father. The implants turn them into the same kind of weapon. Instead of rescuing Angron, they prove they are willing to share the cage. The Legion takes the name World Eaters. It sounds like a threat. Inside, it is a group of sons who cut apart their own brains for a man incapable of loving them without pain. Horus offers rebellion, and you join him. Not because you believe in a new order. You want to kill the Emperor. At Istvan III, loyalist World Eaters survive the virus bombardment. Angron personally descends to murder the sons who kept faith with their old oath. Captain Erlin and the others meet their father with weapons raised. They know they have no chance. For them, it is the last way to prove the Legion could have chosen another path. Lorgar sees that the nails are killing you. Instead of freeing you, he prepares an ascension. On Nuceria, the world of your enslavement, he begins a ritual. People die. Cities die. The memory of the old rebellion is consumed. You fight Guilliman. Lorgar uses the massacre and the pain to give you to Khorne. Angron becomes a demon Primarch. The body changes. The nails do not disappear. They fuse with the demonic form. What was slowly killing a mortal Primarch becomes an eternal part of a creature that can no longer die an ordinary death. Lorgar calls it salvation. The nails will no longer bring the body to its final end. Angron receives immortality. That is exactly why the cure is worse than the disease. Before Ascension, there was an endpoint. The implants were destroying the brain, and someday the pain would have stopped. After Ascension, Khorne returns Angron again and again. In the current age, banishment holds him for only 8 weeks, 8 days, and 8 hours. Artillery can destroy him. Sanguinius can defeat him at the Eternity Gate. He returns. The pain returns with him. On Terra, Sanguinius defeats Angron. The great angel tears out the nails along with part of the demon's skull and banishes him. For one brief moment, Angron feels fear. He knows banishment is not freedom. The warp will take him, Khorne will rebuild him, and everything will continue. Later, he returns to the material galaxy, leads the armies of the World Eaters, and destroys entire systems. Every new manifestation looks like the decision of a furious warlord. In reality, it is a function of the blood god. Khorne does not require Angron to want war. Khorne only requires war to exist. Sometimes traces of the old man remain inside the demon. Memories of his comrades on Nuceria, hatred of the Emperor, understanding of what Lorgar did. They do not give him the ability to change direction. They only make the direction more painful. A completely empty monster cannot recognize its cage. Angron recognizes enough. His fate combines the worst parts of the other tragedies. Like Mortarion, he became the slave of a god. Like Magnus, he lost his original body. Like Curze, he turned pain into a justification for violence. Like Sanguinius, he left a curse to his sons. Like Vulkan, he cannot receive a final death. The difference is that Angron almost never had a period of freedom he could remember as a normal life. First, the arena masters owned him, then the Nails, then the Emperor, then Horus and Lorgar, now Khorne. Even his victories do not belong to him. The skulls go to Khorne, the blood goes to Khorne, the rage strengthens Khorne. If Angron refuses to fight, the Nails turn existence into pain. If he fights, he carries out his master's will. If he dies, he returns. If he wins, the chain becomes tighter. He has no wrong choice, because the right one was surgically removed on Nuceria. That is why Angron takes the final place. Horus lost his soul but received an ending. Mortarion lives in slavery and keeps enough reason to scheme. Magnus builds plans and believes in his own cleverness. Angron receives only repetition, pain, rage, battle, banishment, return. He was created with the gift of relieving the suffering of others. The galaxy turned that gift into a mechanism that produces suffering without pause. In the 41st millennium, even demigods receive a purpose. Angron's is the simplest. Never stop screaming. Every new return is another reminder that even banishment cannot free him. The warp releases Angron only so that pain can receive a body, a weapon, and a direction for the next meaningless war. Those are the worst fates of the Primarchs. The lion lost 10,000 years and returned to sons who had made secrecy into a way of life. Guilliman awakened to govern a nightmare built from the ruins of his dream. The Khan vanished on a road with no end. Vulkan learned that immortality preserves the body, but does not protect the mind. Dorn left behind a hand, and an argument over whether he died at all. Corax followed his own guilt into the warp. Ferrus died by the hand of his closest brother, and left a legion that understood his lesson backward. Sanguinius turned one death into an inherited curse. Curze proved his prophecy at the cost of his entire life. Magnus received knowledge without freedom. Mortarion became a copy of the tyrant he hated. Horus understood the truth one moment before annihilation. Angron did not even receive that ending. The Emperor created sons to conquer the galaxy. In the end, the galaxy found a use for every one of them. Some became saints, others became demons. Several were lost in places nobody should investigate too closely. The family project ended the way most imperial projects end. The objective was technically achieved. Half the participants died, the documentation contradicts itself, and the consequences require 10,000 years of maintenance.